Hare Krishna, welcome to everyone to our course overview of Gita.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Today we are uh, doing our 58th class. This is based on chapter number 17, and this is our second class on chapter number 17. Last Thursday we had our first class on this chapter. As usual, we will start with by invoking Mangalacharan prayers to invoke auspiciousness. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानञ्जनाशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी श्रीराधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. So coming to the overview chart of chapter number 17, we have already covered the first section, the second section, and part of the third section. Almost, I would say, half of the third section. So today we will be covering the rest of the third section and the full fourth section. So in the first two sections, we have understood about Arjuna's question when he asks this question to Lord Krishna. What about those who have faith but not in scriptures? So what happens to those? Are they in goodness, passion, or ignorance? And then the Lord explained that these kind of faith are arising from uh, the modes, the three modes, sattva, rajas, and tamas. And if you observe clearly, looking at people's eating habits, habits of worship, uh, austerities, and so on, you will be able to recognize in which mode they are. So let us see what the summary of the class in the previous class what we discussed. Let us look at the summary. uh, yeah. So as I mentioned, it started with the Arjuna asking a question from Lord Krishna about unauthorized worship, but faith not based on scriptures. And then Lord replies that these are of three types. These people, faith are of three types: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And this arises because of different modes. And you can recognize these various type of faith by observing the method of worship, how they worship, what type of food they are eating, what are the sacrifices they are doing, and like that. So worship in goodness is something where the person does worship of demigods. Worship in passion, actually the person worship yakshas and demons. And worship in ignorance, the sadhaka is interested in the worship of ghosts and spirits. And also we discussed in a little more detail about ghosts and spirits, the bhutas and the pretas. So I briefly mentioned that the bhutas are actually those who either end their life prematurely, or probably they are too attached to their material position, to their house or whatever. and then they continue to remain in a ghostly existence. But in the ghostly existence, they don't have facility to enjoy because they don't have the gross body. They have desires, but they don't have the means to enjoy those desires. So they remain as ghosts. Whereas pretas are somebody who have subtle body, who have soul, and but they don't have a gross body like we have. The non-ghosts, or the living or the live people have. But for pretas, what happens is that once the person passes away, he gets a temporary body. uh, a temporary body is more subtler than the gross body, but grosser than the subtle body. So once the pinddan is done, and after the pinddan, the whatever is the offering has been made in the name of that person. Through that offering, actually the person gets a pitra body. So from preta, it becomes a pitra and goes to the pitra loka. We also discussed about panchopasana worship, and specifically we looked at the panchopasana worship in light of the explanation given by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, one of the acharyas in our Vaishnava parampara, and in which Bhaktivinoda Thakur have mentioned about how initially the person assumes that the supreme absolute truth is some energy. From energy level, it moves towards something like the energetic, like somebody has a source of that energy. So from energy level means the shaktas, then from shaktas it moves to the Sauriyas. Sauriyas is the worshipper of sun. So sun is the source of all the energy. So initially it is towards the material nature, then moving towards the sun, and then the conception grows that maybe there are some strong, powerful beings who are associated with this energy, and then these are called as Ganapatyas, worshipper of Ganapatis, because they have some human-like or a animal-like head and a trunk of a human. Then this conception further grows to that maybe there is a impersonal absolute truth behind all this, which is creating, moving things, maintaining things. And then from the impersonal absolute to the personal, uh, some person organizing and maintaining all these creation and doing the maintenance. So we discuss this in the light that these are the Panchopasana deities in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's explanation have been kind of used as a concept for mentioning 5 different type of uh, people who have 5 different conceptions of the absolute truth. One is thinking the absolute truth as energy. Another is thinking something like as a source of that energy. Then some being associated with energy. Then that being is actually impersonal in nature, and then from impersonal to personal in nature. So personal, impersonalists are known as Shaivas, and the personalists are the Vaishnavas. So like that, we understood that how worship of different people with different faith can be having different conceptions. From that we move to uh, another concept which the Lord discusses in verse number 5 and 6, where the Lord starts from the bottommost rung of this banyan tree, where the demoniacs are defined. So here demoniac worship was mentioned that it is done out of pride and ego. It is impelled by lust, attachment, and strength. And after describing demonic worship, the Lord explains about food in goodness, food in passion, food in ignorance. Food in goodness is uh, enduring to life. They are pleasant, they are juicy, they are fatty. Like that, there were some examples given in Srila Prabhupada purport. Uh, then food in passion are bitter, pungent, burning, very salty. So these are food of passion. They can create diseases, they create uneasiness in the body. So these are food in passion. Food in ignorance is something like which are stale, which are full of untouchable things like meat, liquor, all those things. So they are food in goodness, passion, and ignorance. So some description was given by the Lord in these verses. Uh, and then finally we concluded our previous class by understanding different type of sacrifices: sacrifice in mode of goodness, sacrifice in mode of passion, and sacrifice in mode of ignorance. So sacrifice in mode of goodness is something which is done according to scriptures, with nothing expectation in return. In passion, the person expects some benefit in return. And sacrifice in mode of ignorance is not done according to scriptures. And uh, there is no charity given, there is no mantra, or Vedic hymns are recited. There is no remuneration given to the priest organizing that sacrifice. So like that we have discussed about food in various modes and sacrifice in various modes. So we will continue our discussion in this class on further discussing about austerities and charity. So austerity in various modes and charity in various modes. But before we discussed austerity in various modes, Lord Krishna actually gives some description about various types of austerities. So Lord Krishna mentions that austerity can be of three types. It can be performed by body, it can be performed at the level of speech, and it can be performed at the level of mind. So austerity at the level of body, speech, and mind. So one verse each for each of these austerities, the Lord Krishna is explaining in these verses. So in the 14th verse, Lord Krishna mentions about austerity of body. What is that? Devadvija Guru Pragya Pujanam Shochamarjavam Brahmacharyam Ahimsa Cha Shariram Tapa Uchyate. So he's saying, what is Shariram Tapa Uchyate? What is known as Shariram? What is known as the austerity of the Sharira? Tapa means austerity, Uchyate means called. So what is known as the austerity of Sharira, that is the body? There are several indicators here. Dev Dvija Guru Pragya. Dev Dvija. Dev means the worship of the Supreme Lord, or worship of the demigods. Then Dvija. Dvija means worship of the Brahmanas. Dvija means Brahmana. Dvija. Dvija means the Brahmana means one who takes birth two times. Ja means Janma, Dvi means two. So Dvija means the Brahmana takes birth two times. First time he takes birth from the natural birth from the womb of his mother. But the second time he takes birth when he gets initiated by the spiritual master. That is considered as the second birth. So that is how when it is known as Dvija. Dev Dvija Guru. Guru means the spiritual teacher. So doing worship and pragya. Pragya means those who are superiors. And Srila Prabhupada in his translation give example of superior is, for example, like father and the mother. So worship of Supreme Lord, the Brahmanas, the spiritual master, and the superiors. Uh, if when we do the worship, when we offer respects, when we do their worship, that is known as the austerity by the body. Then Brahmacharya, Shaucham, Arjavam. Shaucham and Arjavam. Shaucham is cleanliness and Arjavam is simplicity. So cleanliness, whenever this word comes, cleanliness, Srila Prabhupada always mention about internal cleanliness and the external cleanliness. So austerity of the body, cleanliness would actually really mean the external cleanliness, and internal cleanliness would mean austerity of the mind. uh, so this is cleanliness. Simplicity means we should be simple in our behavior. And then uh, simplicity can also mean following the rules and regulation of the scriptures and like that. So brahmacharyam ahimsa cha. Brahmacharyam is celibacy and ahimsa is non-violence. So celibacy means not engaging in sexual activities. So for brahmacharis, it would be clear no in indulging these sex related activities. But for grahasthas, it would mean that only restricting yourself to your legally or dharmically wedded wife or husband. So that is mainly for the grahasthas. So sex outside married life is something which is not considered as brahmacharyam for householders. Ahimsa is that not uh, offending somebody by body, by attacking somebody, or by creating any violent attack towards them. So that is ahimsa. So all these things are known as austerities of body. Then the second one is austerity is the austerity of speech. And this verse is very popular. Specifically, Srila Prabhupada has quoted this verse several times and very relevant as far as the modern time is concerned. So austerity of speech is something uh, which is related to how we talk, how we communicate. And there are some parameters given by Lord Krishna on which if you check yourself, your speech, your communication, you will understand where do you stand in terms of austerity of speech. So the verse goes like this: Anudvega karam vakyam satyam priyahitam chayat swadhyaya abhyasanam chaiva vanmayam tapa uchyate. Vanmayam tapa uchyate. So Vanmayam is voice. Tapaha is austerity, and uchyate is means it is said to be. So what is said to be the tapa of Vanmayam? What is said to be the austerity of speech? These three parameters are considered to be the austerity of speech. What are those? Anudveg karam vakyam. Anudveg karam. Anudveg karam means your words should not be agitating to others. You are speaking, but your speech should not agitate someone, should not make the person feel disturbed. Mentally, he should remain peaceful, should not feel agitated or disturbed by your words. But Srila Prabhupada here mentions that uh, sometimes the spiritual master may have to speak certain truths, may have to speak certain facts regarding to his disciple, so to his student, in order to make him realize and advance in the spiritual life. So in that case, that is acceptable. But in general, we should speak in a way which is anudveg karam. Anudveg karam means should not be agitating to others. Then the second parameter is, second criteria is satyam. We should always speak truthful. We should always speak the truth. Then priya hitam. Priya means pleasing. Those words that we speak should be priya, should be pleasing to others. And hitam. Hitam means we should speak for the benefit of others. It should not be something directed to harm others. And then all whatever we speak should be also uh, upheld by the scriptures. So this is something like swadhyay abhyasanam chaiva. Swadhyay abhyasanam chaiva. Swadhyay means reciting of Vedic literature. Swadhyay abhyasanam chaiva. So our speech should be in line with the rules and regulations given in the scriptures. So that is five things: anudveg karam, non-agitating. They should be truthful, they should be pleasing, they should be beneficial, and these words should be upheld by the scriptures. So this is, if our speech is meeting all these five standards, that is something which is known as the austerity of speech. So we can see that many times when we speak, we may speak the truth, but some many times the truth may not be very pleasing to the other person, or it may agitate the other person, or we may be speaking the truth, although we may be saying that we are speaking the truth to the other person, but behind that speaking of truth, our intention is actually to hurt the person. It is not for the benefit of the person. So austerity of speech should be non-agitating to others, truthful, pleasing, beneficial, and should also be upheld by the Vedic scripture. So here the picture that I have shown here is Shukdev Goswami reciting Srimad Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj, and Shukdev Goswami is speaking all this Srimad Bhagavatam for the benefit of Parikshit Maharaj. It is very sweet and pleasing to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam, nothing more is truthful than what is explained in Srimad Bhagavatam, like that, and it is actually the scripture. So we can see that what example of what is actually the austerity of speech. So whenever you are speaking something related to the scriptures, when you are speaking something about Krishna Bhakti, you are speaking about Ramayana, Mahabharat, Bhagavad Gita, and all that. Actually, that is austerity of speech. So now moving to the third type of austerity, which is austerity of mind. Here the Lord says, Manah prasadah saumyatvam maunam atma vinigraha bhavasham shuddhiretyatat tapo manasam uchyate. So what are the austerities of the mind? These are satisfaction, manah prasadaha, and then saumyatvam. Saumyatvam means non-duplicity. Maunam means silence, and atma vinigraha. Then bhava shamshuddhir eti etat. Bhava shamshuddhir means purification of one's existence. So what are the examples of manah prasadaha? So satisfaction means not desiring anything beyond whatever genuine material needs are there. So if we desire more than that, that is something which is not satisfying. And whenever the person is involved in uh, 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 in the reading of Vedic literature, or in the following scriptures, or in the following the rules and regulation of scriptures, he will, by default, he will automatically feel very, very satisfied. Srila Prabhupada uh, here writes in the purport, in the present age we unnecessarily engage the mind in so many different ways of sense gratification, and so there is no possibility of the minds become satisfied. The best course is to divert the mind to the Vedic literature, which is full of satisfying stories, as in the Puranas and the Mahabharata. And then, when we read these Vedic literature, we uh, we will tend to feel purified. So that is bhava samsuddhir etyattat. And then maunam means there could be two ways we can understand maunam. Maunam means silence. So silence could be external silence, or silence could be internal silence also. External silence would be that we don't speak, we don't physically speak. We just keep restrict our tongue or our speech to stop. So that is external maunam. But there could be internal meaning of the maunam as well. Internal meaning of maunam would be feeling peaceful from inside, feeling not agitated. So that is internal meaning of maunam. But Srila Prabhupada also explains the another meaning of maunam, or in a devotional meaning of maunam. Maunam would mean that uh, unless till the time you are speaking about the Lord, till the time you are speaking about bhakti, till the time you are speaking about scriptures, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, Ramayana, etc., that is also can be classified as maunam, because ultimately maunam means to have inner peace, to have inner satisfaction. And what more satisfying can be by speaking the by using our speaking propensity to glorify the Lord. So that is something is also known as maunam. And self control is mainly to not indulge in any other sense gratification and all those kind of enjoying propensities. So that is something which is manha prasada, satisfaction. Saumyatvam, non duplicity. So non duplicity is we should be very, very straightforward in our dealings. We should not be something like that muh mein ram bagal mein churi. We should not be duplicitous in our behavior. We should be straightforward. And maunam, as I already explained, this is something like internal and external. And atma vinigraha is self control, not engaging ourselves in unnecessary sense gratification, sense enjoyment. So these are considered as the austerity of mind. For devotees, austerity of mind is primarily is chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So mantra actually means manastrayate iti mantra. Mana is mind. Manastrayate. So what liberates the mind, what sound liberates the mind is actually known as mantra. Manastrayate iti mantra. So when we chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, our mind tends to wander here and there, but we try to bring that mind again back to this transcendental sound vibration of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So that is an austerity. to to try to bring the wandering mind again and again back and focus on the spiritual sound is also an austerity. So for devotees, the main austerity, the main tapasya of mind is chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Now, after describing austerities of body, austerity of speech, and austerity of mind, Lord Krishna now explained about austerity in three modes. Like he has already explained food in three modes, worship in three modes, and sacrifice in three modes, yet is yajna in three modes. Now he is explaining the austerity in three modes. So in the 17th verse, he's telling austerity in three modes. First of all, he mentions about austerity in goodness. He's saying, Shraddhaya paraya taptam tapasthatrividham naraihi aphalakankshirбhir satvikam parichakshate. So what is austerity in goodness? This austerity is done by faith. This is performed with faith. Shraddhaya paraya taptam. Shraddhaya means faith. Then uh, Shraddhaya paraya taptam, and then aphala kankshir bhir yuktai. Aphala kankshi. Aphala kankshi means there is no expectation in return. So whenever we do some austerity, it is not that we should be asking for money, we should be asking for good results, we should be asking for a good wife or a good husband, like that. We should not be doing that. So aphala kankshir bhir yuktai satvikam parichakshate, and uh, it should be done for the sake of supreme. So such an austerity which is done with faith, which is done with no expectation in return, and which is done mainly for the supreme, is called to be in the mode of goodness. Then the Lord explains about austerity in mode of passion. He's saying, Satkarman pujartham tapodambhena chaiva yat kriyate tadiha proktam rajasam chalamadhruvam. So the first line says, Satkaram man pujartham. Hmm. The austerity that is done by satkar, by expecting satkar. Satkar means respect or honor. And then pujartham means worship. Then artham means for the sake of some money. Uh, then tapo dambhen chaivayat. Dambhen means out of pride. So austerity done out of pride for something, for gaining some respect, for gaining some honor, for gaining something material, that is actually known as austerity in mode of passion. So we have uh, discussed about these kind of behaviors, what is mode of passion, what is mode of goodness, a lot in the 14th chapter. So these are all very much rhyming and resembling to what we have discussed in the past. So this is the austerity in the mode of passion. And then austerity done in the mode of ignorance. मूढग्राहेण आत्मनो यत्पीडया क्रियते तपः परस्योत् साधारणार्थं वा तत्ताम samudahritam. He's saying penance performed out of foolishness, with self-torture, or to destroy or injure others, is said to be in the mode of ignorance. So some people do austerity which is very, very torturous to their bodies, which is done out of foolishness, which is not done for some good cause, which is also sometimes performed for harming others. Say somebody else may, to gain victory of someone else, to maybe kill someone else, something like that. So this is all austerity in the mode of ignorance. So let us see one example of austerity in the mode of ignorance. Here the slide is showing two pictures, which is all, both the pictures are related to one of the demon kings in the past by the name Hiranyakashipu. So Hiranyakashipu wanted to gain the control of the whole universe, and that is why he started doing austerities, very severe austerities, uh, for Lord Brahma. And while performing these austerities, he even did these austerities in a such a severe way that there was an ant hill that grew around the body of Hiranyakashipu, and the ants in that ant hill even eat the flesh of Hiranyakashipu, and that is to the extent he gave torture to his body. So uh, uh, and ultimately, when Lord Brahma was pleased by Hiranyakashipu's austerity, he came, appeared before him, sprinkled some water over Hiranyakashipu, and then only he was able to gain back his original body. But the point is that the austerity was done mainly for a very uh, 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 very bad reason. That the reason was mainly to uh, overcome Lord Vishnu and gain the control of the whole universe. So that is the kind of austerity, an example of austerity in mode of ignorance. Now let us look at the charity in three modes. Here, Lord starts to give description about charity in three modes. First of all, he explains about charity in goodness. He's saying, दातव्यम् इति यद्दानं दीयते अनुकारिणे देशे काले च पात्रे च तद्दानं सात्विकं स्मृतम्. He's saying, दातव्यम् इति यद्दानं दीयते अनुपकारिणे. Huh? Datavyam iti. So charity given out of duty. It is worth giving, which is given out of duty, out of kartavya. And uh, anupakarine. Anupakarine means irrespective of return, no expectation of return. So many times we see people give charity, but they expect that their nameplate will be installed at a particular location, or maybe they anticipate that there would be some announcement made in the program that this charity was given by such and such person, like that. So that is something, uh, the charity is given out of duty without expectation of return, and at a proper time and place. Deshe kale cha patre cha. At a proper time and place, and to a worthy person. So deshe means place, kale means time, and patra means worthy person. So desh kal patra, at a proper time, place, and to a worthy person. Such charity is known as charity in the mode of goodness. So Srila Prabhupada has given some examples of charity of mode of goodness. Say, generally the Vedic scripture recommend giving charity to a person engaged in spiritual activities, and it is not recommended to give charity indiscriminately. Indiscriminately means without discriminating whom we are giving the charity, for what purpose we are giving this charity, in what mood we are giving this charity. So it is not like that. And then he's further giving the example of proper time, place, and worthy person. He's saying it should be given at the place of a pilgrimage. For example, you might go to Vrindavan, or maybe Ayodhya, or some other uh, pilgrimage. So when you are in the pilgrimage, it's a nice place to give charity. Then time, uh, is mentioning that many times the charity is given during Chandra Grahan or Surya Grahan, or at the end of the month, and it is given to maybe a qualified Brahmana or a Vaishnava, or in the temples. So when you go to the temple, you may want to give some charity. So such charity, which is given out of duty, kartavya, which is given with no expectation in return, at a proper time, place, and to a worthy person, actually is known as charity in the mode of goodness, sattvic charity, sattvic dan. Then the mode of passion, charity, what are the symptoms? यत्तु प्रत्युपकारार्थं फलमुद्दिश्य वा पुनः दीयते च परिक्लिष्टं तद्दानं राजसंस्मृतम्. But charity given with expectation, charity given with some desire for benefit, and charity given in a grudging mood or unwillingly, actually these are the charities known as in the mode of passion. So many times we don't like to give charity, or when we give some charity, we actually curse the person, say why this person actually came to my house to for asking charity, better he should not have come to my house. So sometimes people give charity in a very grudging mood or in a very unwilling way. So these are the charities in the mode of passion. So Prabhupada is giving few examples in the purport. He's saying uh, sometimes charity is performed for the elevation to the heavenly kingdom. So sometimes people do some yagyas or some danam, mainly to elevate their life to a higher planetary system like Swarga. So this is something which is known as charity in mode of passion. He also give another example. He's saying charity is also sometimes given under some obligation at the request of a superior. Sometimes your superior may ask you to give some charity, and you are obliged now to give that charity. That is also charity in the mode of passion. And there are many charitable foundations which offer their gifts to institutions where sense gratification goes on. So sometimes people give charity to maybe some institution where there is nothing much spiritual about them, but mainly for uh, giving this charity where these institutions are actually promoting sense gratification. So those are something charities which are known as charity in the mode of passion. Then coming to the third type, charity in the mode of ignorance. It is adeshakale yaddanam patre abhyascha diyate asatkramat asatkratam avagyatam tattama samudahritam. So charity performed at an impure place at an improper time to unworthy person or without proper attention and respect is said to be in the mode of ignorance. So uh, in the mode of ignorance, the charity is given at the impure place. So impure place could be what are those places? For example, places of gambling, places of intoxication. These are the places where impurity is there. So you may be giving some charity to these kind of institutions like pubs, bars, or maybe gambling houses. So that is something which is impure at an improper time. Improper time, maybe the time is right, but you are making this charity to these improper impure places. That is something which is uh, uh, charity in mode of ignorance, and which is given with disregard and discourtesy. Disregard and discourtesy means uh, without any respect or without any attention. So these are the symptoms of charity given in mode of ignorance. So let us look at the example of charity in mode of goodness. And here the example of Bali Maharaj is there, charity in mode of goodness. So the story of Bali Maharaj is that actually Bali Maharaj is a demon king. He's a asura by birth, but not by his disposition, but not by his uh, uh, habits or his consciousness. His consciousness is very much that of a consciousness of a devotee. So when Lord Vaman Dev approaches Bali Maharaj and asks him 3 steps worth of land to be given to him in charity, Bali Maharaj readily agrees. So this charity, what he gave to Lord Vaman Dev, was without any expectation in return. It was given uh, with a uh, uh, with out of duty. Uh, Out of duty, how can we say that? Because when Lord appeared or Lord approached to Bali Maharaj for charity, his guru, who is Shukracharya, actually asked Bali not to give charity to Vaman Dev, because he understood that Vaman Dev is actually none other than Lord Vishnu in disguise. But Bali Maharaj mentioned to his guru that if the Lord himself has come to my house, what could be the more fortunate thing for me? So that is why he rejected his spiritual master in that circumstance, and he overruled his spiritual master and gave charity to Vaman Dev. And that is why this charity is actually known as charity in mode of goodness. Actually, you can call this charity not in mode of goodness, but even higher, charity in mode of transcendence, because it was done directly for the Lord. But just to give you an example of how in the mood, how it was given out of duty without any expectation in return to a worthy person, because Vamandev was a Brahmana at that time. So that is why you can call this having the all the attributes of charity in mode of goodness. So these are some of the compilations which I have already read to you from the purports of Srila Prabhupada, where he's explaining the symptoms of charity in mode of goodness, charity in mode of passion, and charity in the mode of ignorance. So I'll just skip this slide, but just for your reading later on, I've just compiled these various quotes from Srila Prabhupada's purport. Okay, so that completes the previous section where we have discussed about uh, food in various modes, austerity in various modes, sacrifice in various modes, and charity in different modes. Now we are coming to the final section of this chapter, which is about Om Tat Sat. Now, so far the mood and the tenure of the chapter number 17, have been relatively very simple. It is easy to relate to what we have been speaking till now, about different charities, how we can identify which charity or which particular activity is in which mode. But this section of 17th chapter is rather more philosophical oriented, but it is the most important part of this chapter, and most important in the sense that actually this is the uh, I would say the essence of this 17th chapter, which is covered in this section, ranging from verse number 23 to 28, which explains uh, about the meaning of the word Om Tat Sat. So let us see what it is. So before we go into individual verses in this section, I would like to approach this section in a way that we first of all understand the concepts discussed in this section, and then once you understand the concept, we will then go to the individual verses from 23 till 28 to see how those concepts which we will try to understand here, how these concepts make sense when we discuss these concepts in the respective verses from 23 onwards. So let us see how this particular section of 17th chapter is connected with the previous part of this particular chapter. So far, what we have discussed is how to recognize various type of faiths by observing the worship, the food, the austerity, the charity, and so on. So this is covered in verse number 1 till verse number 22. But now, uh, what we need to understand is that these worships are in various modes: mode of goodness, mode of passion, and mode of ignorance. But from our previous study, we have understood that goodness, passion, ignorance, all these three modes are actually contaminated. They are defective. All three of them are binding in nature. Binding means all three of them bind us to the material world. So it is not difficult to understand how mode of ignorance and how mode of passion bind. But even mode of goodness also bind us to the material world. So all these combination of various modes in goodness, passion, and ignorance, they are defective and are binding in nature. But in this last section of 17th chapter, we will understand how the defects of these various modes, how the defects of mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance, how this defect can be removed simply by chanting Om Tat Sat. Om Tat Sat, when we chant this Om Tat Sat after doing our activity, we can remove the defect of these various modes. So this is one part that you need to understand, that the final section is all about making these various modes like mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance uh, remove their defects. And now this particular slide, what it is telling you here is, we have so far covered in the 16th chapter, we have covered the divine and the demoniac. So we understood that the demoniac are faithless. Faithless means they don't have any faith in the scriptures. And we also understood about divine. Divine are those who have faith in the scriptures. So where we are, when we are talking about divine, we are talking about this level, scriptural faith. And in this particular chapter, what we have read so far is, we have primarily read about non-scriptural faith. So when we have read about people in mode of passion, people in mode of ignorance, we are primarily talking about those people who are having non-scriptural faith. And when we were talking about people who are doing charity in mode of goodness, who are doing uh, austerity in mode of goodness, who are doing sacrifice in mode of goodness, we were talking about people who are having scriptural faith. And when we talked about in verse number 5 and 6, where worship of demons were described, uh, we were talking about the demons. However, in this section, what we are going to read is that we can transcend from faithless, non-scriptural faith, coming to scriptural faith, ultimately to transcendental faith. Transcendental faith by chanting Om Tat Sat. So Om Tat Sat is something which will elevate our activities from scriptural faith to transcendental faith. Now, what is the difference between scriptural faith and transcendental faith? So we need to understand that not everything that is given in the scriptures, not everything that is given in the scripture is actually transcendental. It may be in the mode of goodness, but may not be in the mode of transcendence. Mode of transcendence means which is mainly aimed at elevating our consciousness beyond this material world. Now, what is an example for that? Example for that is if you understand the difference between vegetarianism and prasad. Uh, Vegetarianism is something which we think, which we propagate, or which we make people understand. This is something which is in the mode of goodness. Eating vegetarian food is in mode of goodness. However, we simply don't restrict the devotees or the transcendentalists don't restrict themselves only to vegetarianism. They connect their food, even their food, to something higher, something beyond this material world. And what is that something? That something is none other than the Supreme Lord. Now, the understanding of the Supreme Lord may not be for these practitioner spiritualists. The understanding of the Supreme Lord may not be at a topmost level. Topmost level means that at the level of Lord Sri Krishna. uh, so their understanding of transcendence would be that this material world is temporary, but there is something beyond this material world which is eternal, which is eternal. And that eternality, for that eternity, it is my goal where I want to go. So that is why this is something uh, uh, mentioned as Om Tat Sat. Uh, Elevate by chanting Om Tat Sat. Now, Om Tat Sat in its conception comprises of transcendence from basic liberation to going to the abode of the Supreme Lord, Lord Krishna. So transcendence has a range. Transcendence is something which is broad. Transcendence would mean, the basic transcendence would means liberation, moksha, mukti, transcendence. That is something which is just coming out from the material world. But when you come out from the material world, there are various degrees where you can elevate yourself. So here the Om Tat Sat, it is actually representative of that transcendence which is ranging from basic liberation to the highest level, which is the going to the Golok Dham. Golok Dham means going to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, Lord Krishna. So that is why it is not mentioned specifically as elevate by chanting Hare Krishna. It is mentioned here as elevate your consciousness by chanting Om Tat Sat. Om Tat Sat. Now we will look much more deeply into the meaning of what does Om Tat Sat would mean. But in order to summarize this slide, faithless is something which is related to the demons. Non-scriptural faith is something, the faith of people who are in mode of ignorance, in the mode of passion. Scriptural faith is something to do with the people who are in the mode of goodness. And transcendental faith is something when the scriptural faith, which is in the mode of goodness, is done, the activity is done mainly for the transcendence, mainly for the objective of transcending the material world. That is something which is known as transcendental faith. And that elevation of scriptural faith to transcendental faith can be done by connecting our activities to the Supreme Lord, and that is done by chanting these three syllables Om Tat Sat. So I am now quoting by verse number 23 purport by Srila Prabhupada. Kindly have a look at this. Srila Prabhupada is saying, it has been explained that penance, sacrifice, charity, and foods are divided into three categories: the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. So, what he's mentioning in this first line is the part that we have already covered till verse number 22. But whether first class, second class, or third class, they are all conditioned, contaminated by the material modes of nature. That is what I just explained to you in the previous slide. So although they are in mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance. So passion and ignorance, we know it is contaminated. But even the mode of goodness is contaminated. They are all conditioned and contaminated by the material modes. But now the last line is, when they are aimed at the Supreme, and then Prabhupada writes, Om Tat Sat, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Eternal. They become means for spiritual elevation. Here you should scrutinizingly read the last line, very detailed. When they are aimed at the Supreme, and then Prabhupada says Om Tat Sat. So what it means, Om Tat Sat actually refers to the Supreme. Here he has not mentioned Krishna. Here he is using a very non-personal word, Supreme. Supreme means he's beyond. He's beyond this material world. He's the all-powerful, all-knowing. He's something which is the Supreme, which is the topmost power in this whole universe. And he's saying the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Eternal. So here he's using the word Supreme. Then he's using the word the Eternal. Eternal means who was there when nothing was there. Eternal means ever present. So when our activities are aimed at Supreme, which is known as Om Tat Sat, they becomes means for spiritual elevation. So before that, unless and until all these penances, sacrifices, charity, food, all these activities, even if they are in goodness, unless and until these activities are aimed at the Supreme, Om Tat Sat, they cannot become the means for spiritual elevation. And now let us discuss individually what does Om means, what is uh, Tat means, what is Sat means. So individual words we will pay a little more attention now. What is Om, Tat, and Sat actually mean? So this slide tells you about what does Om means. Om is actually a very non-personal name for the absolute truth. Om can mean Krishna. Om can means Paramatma. Om can means Parameshwar. Om can also means Brahman. So Brahman means the Brahma Jyoti of the Lord. Paramatma means the all pervading, all I would say, Paramatma means that Paramatma is situated in the in everyone's heart. Hmm. So that is the Paramatma feature of the Lord. Bhagavan or Lord Krishna, uh, uh, Om can mean Lord Krishna also. So that is what I was saying to you, that this Om Tat Sat actually is referring to the whole aspect of the transcendental aspect, like starting from liberation, where the living entity merges into the Brahma Jyoti, or goes to the Vaikuntha planet, which is the Paramatma realization, or going to the Golok Vrindavan, being the personal associate of the Lord, which is the Bhagwan realization. So Om can mean anything, but it is a very non-personal name of the absolute truth. It can mean Krishna, it can mean Paramatma, it can also mean Brahman. And now you need to understand, although this is a name, Om is a name of the absolute truth, but this is a secondary name. It is not the primary name. But what is the difference between primary name and the secondary name? Primary name actually talks about the activities of the Lord, or very specific activities of the Lord, where you can be very, very specific. For example, when we say Yashoda Nandan, Yashoda Nandan would mean son of Yashoda. And then the description of the absolute truth becomes very, very specific, which is Lord Krishna. That is the primary name. So names like Yashoda Nandan, Radhika Vallabh, huh, and then Parth Sarthi. All these names are are known as primary names of the absolute truth. But what are secondary names? Secondary names could be Paramatma, Bhagwan, Parmeshwar, huh, and Jagat Pita. So these are secondary names. So these names don't talk about very specific activity of the Lord. And when you say Paramatma, Parmeshwar, Parmeshwar means supreme controller. Paramatma means super soul. Jagat Pita means father of the universe. Now here it is not very clear that who is the father of that universe. It is something like he is the father of the universe. For example, when you go to the office, you say there's a post called head of the department, but that head of the department is something very generic. But when you say that Mr. So and so is the head of the department, then it becomes very specific. So Om is actually a very non-personal name of the absolute truth. And then when we say it is a name of the absolute truth, where do we get the reference? We get this reference from Rig Veda. Here it says, Om iti etad brahmano nedishtham nama. Om is another name of Brahman. Om is another name of Brahman. So this reference comes in Rig Veda, where it is mentioned what is Om. Om is actually the name of the absolute truth. And what is the nature of this name? This name is a secondary name, which talks about the attributes of the absolute truth, some non-personal attributes of the absolute truth, but not very specific personal attributes of the absolute truth. And when I was mentioning that Om also means Krishna, where is the reference? There are three places in Bhagavad Gita where Lord Krishna says, I am Om. In 7.8, in 9.17, and in 10.25. So in all these three places, Lord Krishna mentions, I am Om. And you can see that this conception of Lord being all pervasive, all powerful, all knowing, it is not only there in the Vedic literature, it is also there in the other religions also. And how do we know that? Uh, we see there is a word in English known as omni. And when we talk about omnipresent, when we talk about omniscient, we are talking about all knowing Lord, all present Lord who is all present everywhere. But the word is omni. Now this omni sounds very similar to om. Omni sounds very similar to Om, which is describing about the general aspect of the absolute truth, like is all powerful, all merciful, all knowing, like that. So not only in English, you see in Islamic religion or in Abrahamic religion where Amin. Now Amin is also sounding very similar to Om, and Amen. Amen is also very similar to Om. So in Om Tat Sat, this is the first name of the Supreme Absolute Truth, Om. So I hope the conception is clear. What I'm trying to say, what does Om means? Now let us look at Tat. So this word Tat comes from the Upanishads, from this sutra which is known as Tat Tvam Asi. So Tat Tvam Asi. Tat means that. Tvam means you. Asi means is, or so that you are. So tat tvam asi, that you are. Now this tat is referring to the supreme absolute truth. So those people who are impersonalists in their understanding of the supreme absolute truth, they translate tattvam asi as that you are that. Tvam means that you are. That you are means that you are that supreme truth. That you are that supreme truth. And they continue to extend that, that you are actually that supreme truth. Now you are covered with Maya, or now you are not in a position to realize that. But when you are overcoming Maya, then you will realize that you are that absolute truth. But that is the understanding of the impersonalists. The Vaishnava understanding of Tattvam Asi is not that. Tattvam Asi means qualitatively you are like that. Qualitatively means you are also Brahman, and the supreme absolute truth is also Brahman. But supreme absolute truth is Parabrahman, and you are simply the part and parcel of that Brahman. So qualitatively you are that. So that you are qualitatively, that is the Vaishnava understanding. So the word tat also means the cause of the universe. The word tat also means the cause of the universe, and this is the second name in the Om Tat Sat of the same absolute truth. And the picture that you see here on the right hand side is mentioning this syllable Tattvam Asi, Tattvam Asi, Om Tattvam Asi. And this is written on the temple in the Shabrimala temple in Kerala. That is written there. So this is very much part of the Vedic understanding of the supreme absolute truth, which is also known as cause of the universe. So the first word that we read was Om. Om means the name of the absolute truth with non-personal attributes. Tat means that absolute truth is actually the cause of the universe. Hmm. That is where everything comes. And this is the second name in the Om Tat Sat, the three syllables. And finally, the third word is Sat. Now, from where this Sat comes? Sat comes from another verse, another sutra in Chandogya Upanishad, which says Sad eva Somyam agre asit. Asit. Sad eva Somyam agre asit. What it means is Sad eva agre asit, which existed before everything else. Agre means in front. Asit, existed. So Sad eva Somyam agre asit. Somyam means O noble one. Like you are the noble, Sad is also very noble, which exists before everything else. That is actually describing the another feature of the absolute truth, which is eternal. Eternal means he existed when nothing existed. So the picture that on the left that you see is a picture of Lord Vishnu, and Lord Vishnu's from the navel of Lord Vishnu comes Lord Brahma, who is also actually worshipping the Lord by referring to him as Om Tat Sat. And Srila Prabhupada mentioned this particular part in the verse number 23, where he says, formerly when Brahma, the first created living entity, performed sacrifices, he indicated by these three words the supreme personality of Godhead. Therefore, the same principle has always been followed by disciplic succession. So, whenever we chant this word Om Tat Sat, or these three words Om Tat Sat, what are we trying to do? We are trying to invoke, we are trying to refer to the same supreme absolute truth, which can be known as Brahman, which can be known as Paramatma, or which can be known as Shri Krishna. Shri Krishna is the topmost understanding of Om Tat Sat, and Brahman is actually the lowermost understanding of Om Tat Sat. So this is uh, individual meaning of Om, Tat, and Sat. So just to summarize, Om is the name of the absolute truth, uh, referring to its non-personal aspects. Tat means one who is the source of everything, and Sat means who is eternal, who is always present. That is the meaning of Sat. Now let us look at the individual verses, what these individual verses are saying. So these individual verses are saying 7.23. It is saying Om Tat Saditi Nirdesho Brahmanas Trividha Smritah Brahmanastena Vedascha Yagyascha Vihitah Purah. So in 23rd verse, the Lord is explaining Om Tat Sat, all three together. So he's saying Om Tat Sat iti Nirdesho. So what is Om Tat Sat? What is Om Tat Sat representing? What is Om Tat Sat is referring to? Om Tat Sat iti Nirdesho. Nirdesho means indicating. Brahmanas Trividha Smritaha. Brahmanas, it is referring to the Brahman. Brahman is what? The supreme absolute truth. Now, the word Brahman can also mean the Brahmajyoti part of the absolute truth, the Paramatma part of the absolute truth, and the supreme absolute truth, which is Lord Krishna. So, that is the Brahman word can actually have many, many meanings. So, he's saying here, uh, From the beginning of the creation, the three words Om Tat Sat were used to indicate the supreme absolute truth. So Om Tat Sat iti nirdesho Brahmanas Trividha Smritaha. Trividha means these three words are referring to Brahman, the supreme absolute truth. Brahmanastena Vedascha Yagyascha Vihitah Pura. And then the second line of this verse says, these are symbolic representations were used by Brahmanas while chanting the hymns of the Vedas and during sacrifices for the satisfaction of the Supreme. So, uh, Brahmanas Brahmanastena Vedascha Yagyascha Vihitah Pura. So, Brahmanas always chant these three words Om Tat Sat when they are doing some sacrifices, some yagyas. So, and why they are doing it? Mainly for the satisfaction of the Supreme. So, here, uh, what we have discussed in the previous slides, Om Tat Sat is actually referring to the non-personal aspect of the Supreme Absolute Truth. Om refers to the name, Tat refers to that it is cause of everything, and Sat refers to that is it is eternal. And this is what actually is summarized in 7.23. He's saying Om Tat Sat represents the supreme absolute truth, and this mantra is chanted by the Brahmanas during sacrifices. Hope that is clear. And then let us move to the 7.24. 7.24 says Tasmad Om Ityudahritya Yagyadana Tapah Kriyah Pravartante Vidhanoktaha Satatam Brahmavadinam. So in 23rd verse, all three Om Tat Sat has been referred to as the supreme absolute truth. Now in 24th, the Lord is specifically mentioning about what is Om. Hmm. So he's saying Tasmad Om Ityudahritya Yagyadana Tapakriya Pravartante Vidhanoktaha Satatam Brahmavadinam. Tasmad Om Ityudahritya Yagyadana Tapakriya. So he's saying that uh, therefore, because Om Tat Sat represents the supreme absolute truth, therefore the transcendentalists undertaking performances of sacrifices, charity, and penance in accordance with scriptural regulations begin always with Om to attain the supreme. So Om is chanted in the beginning of when the sacrifices are performed, or when any dana is performed, or when any yagya is performed. So if you see the Vedic literature, any Vedic mantra would start with Om. In fact, when you see, when we are starting our class, we start with Om Agyana Timirandhasya Gyanan Jana Shalakaya. Om Agyana Timirandhasya. So that we even we start with our class with Om. So Om refers to the same absolute truth, but in its non-personal, non-attributable, or non-specific aspects of the supreme absolute truth. This can even extend to other religions, even in Islam or even in Christianity, where the understanding of God is all pervading, all powerful, all merciful. So, uh, so it is not necessary that you have to do it by chanting Om Tat Sat, but if you are doing it in the same consciousness that I am doing this activity for the supreme absolute truth, who is all powerful, who is eternal, who is all merciful, it is going to give you the same result. So Om Tat Sat is specifically in the Vedic literature that has been given. And then in the 24th verse, it is mentioned Om is always chanted in the beginning, and by whom? Pravartante vidhanoktaha satatam brahmavadinam. Pravartante vidhanokta. Vidhanokta means by following rules and regulations, scriptural rules and regulations. Satatam, always. It is done always. By whom? Brahmavadinam. Brahmavadinam means who are the seeker of Brahman, who are the seeker of transcendence. Transcendence means there is something beyond this material world, huh? That is which is permanent, which is sat, which is permanent, which is eternal. This material world is asat, which is non-permanent. So those who are seeking permanency, those who are seeking sat, those who are seeking eternity, by seekers of Brahman, Om is chanted in the beginning of the sacrifice. Now let us go to the 25th verse. Tad iti अनभिसन्धाय फलं यज्ञ तपः क्रियाः दान क्रियश्च विविधाः क्रियन्ते मोक्षकांक्षिभिः. So in the 25th verse he's saying uh, tad iti anabhisandhaya phalam yajna tapah kriya. Abhisandhaya means there is a word here, abhisandhaya. Abhisandhaya means without desiring. So tat iti, tad, now he's talking about tat. The previous verse was talking about om. This 25th verse is talking about tat. Tat iti abhisandhaya. It is done without desiring any fruit, any result. So uh, uh, this is chanted for liberation from material entanglement, and the sacrifices etc. are done without desiring fruitive activities. So dana kriyascha vividha kriyante moksha kankshi bhi. So tad is chanted for moksha, for liberation, chanted for liberation from material entanglement. Huh. So Om is chanted at the beginning of the sacrifice. The intention behind chanting Tat is mainly for liberation. That's what we have been saying, that any of these activities are can be made transcendental by chanting Om Tat Sat, and Tat here means for liberation from material entanglement. Now coming to the 26th verse. Here 26th verse is talking about Sat. So previous two talked about Om and Tat. Now this one Sat is this 26 is talking about Sat. It is saying Sad bhave sadhu bhave cha sad atteta prayujyate prashaste karmani tatha shab satchabda partha yujyate. So he's saying here Sadbhave sadhu bhave cha sad iti tat prayujyate. What it means is sadbhave. Sadbhave means the word sat is used in the relation to Brahman, in relation to the absolute truth. And sadhu bhave. Sadhu bhave means those people who are chanting this word sat are actually is also used for them also. Sat is also used for the seekers of Brahman. साधु भावे सद्भावे साधु भावे च sad ityet prayujyate. So what is sad? Sad is that which is used in relation to Brahman, which is also used in the relation with who are seekers of Brahman. And then prashaste karmani tatha shat shabda partha yujyate. It is also used, Sat is also used in performing all auspicious activities. So whatever auspicious activities one is using, Sat is also used for defining those activities. So Sat is not only Brahman, it is also those people who are doing that activity, and that activity also is known as Sat. And then in 27 he's saying, Yagye tapasi dane cha stithi saditi chochate कर्म चैव तदिर्थीयम सदित्येवाभिधीयते. Yagya tapasi dane cha. So he's always talking about yagya, tapa, and dan. Huh? Cha stithi sad iti chochate. So in say whatever there is eternality in these activities, in the sacrifice, in the tapa, in the dana, whatever eternality is there in these sacrifices, that is also called as sat. Like we have studied in second chapter, where the Lord says that whenever you do these spiritual activities, the spiritual credit doesn't get diminished. He's saying neha bhi kramo nasho asti pratyavayo na vidyate. So what is sat? So whatever spiritual activities you are doing, sacrifice doing in the mood of absolute truth, yajna you are doing, or dana you are doing in the mood of absolute truth, all these activities are known as sat. and 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 then karma chaiva tadarthiyam sadityeva bhidhiyate. And then any work that is dedicated to the Lord is also called as sat. Tadarthiyam. Tadarthiyam means done for the satisfaction of the Lord. Tadarthiyam means dedicated to the Lord. So any work that you do for the dedicated, which you dedicate to the Lord, is also known as sat. So after describing sat in 7.26 and 7.27, finally he concludes this chapter in 7.28 by explaining that what is not is Sat and what is the result of following Asat. Which, he's saying, Ashraddhaya hutam dattam taptas taptam kritam chayat asadityuchyate partha na cha tat pretyayo no iha. What is saying? Ashraddhaya hutam dattam taptas tapas taptam kritam chayat. So hutam means sacrifice, and dattam means dana, and tapa means austerity. So if you do austerity without having shraddha, ashraddhaya hutam dattam taptas taptam kritam chayat. If you do any of these three activities, tapa, dana, and uh, austerity or yajna, without shraddha in the supreme, that is actually known as asat, which bears no result in this life or in next life. Asadat iti uchyate partha nacha tat pretya no iha. Neither in this life it brings any benefit, nor in next life it brings any benefit. So you may do a lot of sacrifice, you may do, or one may do a lot of sacrifice, one may do a lot of austerities, one may do a lot of charity, but if those three activities, yajna, dana, tapa, kriya, is done without having faith in the Supreme, or without dedicating, or without the purpose of uh, transcending from this material world, all those activities are known as asat. They are waste. They will not bring you any lasting benefit. They may bring you some short term benefit, but may not bring you any lasting benefit. So unless and until any of these three activities, yajna, dan, tapa, kriya, are done for the purpose of transcendence, for the purpose of attaining the Supreme, these activities are known as asat. So the whole idea of this chapter actually is to make us understand, or to make Arjuna realize, that you may do whatever activities you may want to do, but unless and until those activities are directed towards the Supreme Lord, directed towards the Supreme Absolute Truth, those activities are actually going to be wasteful. So even the activities in the mode of goodness, if you do without dedicating it to the Supreme Absolute Truth, are not going to giving you transcendental results. So that is the whole nutshell of this chapter. Hope that was clear. That was quite philosophical in the end, and but that is the main essence of the chapter. I hope you are able to grasp it. If not, then we are ready for taking your doubts. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Let us now open the forum for discussion. I have allowed you to unmute yourself and ask questions.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Uncle ji.
There is a confusion regarding speaking the truth, sweet pill, the bitter pill,
Hmm.
and then also we try to be direct, simple, straightforward.
Hmm.
So how all these things can be there? Truth is always bitter, then we make it palatable,
Yeah.
and then we also look straightforward. So is it possible really in real
Yeah.
life?
Yeah, it is possible. I'll share you some of the lectures by Bhakti Rasamrit Maharaj where he has explained this in great detail. But just to mention to you uh, that yes, it is possible. It is not that you have to speak all these things, every single thing at the same time. For example, I'll just uh, when we speak the truth to the other person, many times we don't take care of the tone. Uh, Tone means in what, with what intention we are speaking the truth. We may tell the person that maybe you are looking maybe some person is dressed not very nicely on a particular day. So if we straight away go and tell to the person that you are not looking very nicely dressed, you are, or we can speak something like you are looking ugly, uh, or you are looking like a ruffian, uh, or whenever we speak like that, we may think that we are speaking the truth. Oh yes, you are looking like a ruffian, you are looking very bad, you are looking very disheveled. But the same thing can be presented in a way which may not actually hurt the other person. So we can say that, uh, do you think you would like to tuck your shirt inside your pants so that it is a little more comfortable for others also to when you have come here in the meeting or in the group, something like that. So
Okay,
do you see the difference between the two presentations?
that's right.
Right. So it is something like that when you are speaking the truth, but you are speaking the truth in a way which is non-agitating, which is palatable, and which actually is not disturbing the other person. It is something. It is pleasing to the other person, isn't it? But at the same time, sometimes it is possible. Sometimes there is no other option than to speak the truth, but the intention or the attempt should be that it doesn't hurt the other person or have pleasing effect, and has to be spoken in the person's benefit. And there could be many examples we can give. I'm not ready with those examples right away, but I can share with you uh, some lectures where you can actually understand what exactly it means, uh, uh, following all the five aspects of speaking the truth.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Hare Krishna Tauji. Yes.
Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kansachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagat Guru. मैं गुरु कृपा से, गुरु आज्ञा से ओम के बारे में कुछ बोलना चाहूंगा।
हाँ जी, बोलिए।
ये ओम पहला शब्द है जो किसी प्राणी ने उच्चारण किया। इसमें तीनों भगवान हैं, ब्रह्मा विष्णु महेश। जब हम कोई शब्द बोलना चाहते हैं तो मुंह खोलते हैं तो होता है आ, दैट इज ब्रह्मा। उत्पत्ति हो गई। फिर उसको खुला नहीं रख सकते हैं, उसकी पालना करनी पड़ती है, तो मुंह को थोड़ा छोटा लिप्स को करें तो हो जाता है ऊ। अब जो उत्पत्ति हुई है, पालना हुई है, तो उसका अंत भी होना है, तो फिर मुंह को बंद करना पड़ता है, तो फिर शब्द को आवाज आती अम। तो इस एक्चुअल वर्ड ओम है, which has all the three meanings of Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, and which is the first word any human has spoken of, born out of Om. That is one I wanted to say about qualities of Shri Krishna. We talked about Omni. So, Omni, we said only two things: omnipresent and omniscient. But there's another quality of Sri Krishna, omnipotent.
Yeah.
Is
Omnipotent.
Sarvyapi,
Yeah.
Sarv Shaktiman, Sarv
Actually, there are six.
Gunsan.
There are six qualities which are in full in
Hanji,
Lord Krishna, and it
Hanji,
is all-knowing, all-powerful, all beautiful, all renounced, and uh, all knowledge, powerful, beauty, omnipotent, which is power. There are six qualities. I am forgetting the two, but I'll share in the WhatsApp group all the six qualities of the absolute truth. So all these six qualities are there in full in Lord Krishna.
Hare Krishna,
All
Hare Krishna.
fame, which is he's all famous, and all rich wealth. Yes. So the other two are all fame and all rich wealth.
And thank
Yeah.
you very much for explaining Om Tat Sat in such a simplified and
Yeah.
very easy way.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
This is
Thank
a
you.
base of life.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
So any questions on Om Tat Sat for devotees who were not able to maybe have any doubts there? Were you able to understand?
One thing more I want to know. Some people speak it like Hari Om Tat Sat. So what does it Hari? Is it necessary or is it part of this Om Tat Sat? Mostly I have heard people speaking Hari Om Tat Sat.
I have to check on that exactly. But Hari also is the name of the Lord. Hari means who
Okay.
takes us all our inauspiciousness. So
And what about Hare? We call Hare Krishna, Hare Rama. So is it different Hari or Hare?
yeah, Hari
Is
is,
there any difference?
yeah, Hare is referring mainly to the energy of the Lord.
Okay.
Energy of the Lord means like we say Radha Krishna. So
Okay.
Hare actually refers to Radha, or maybe Sita Ram.
Okay.
So Hare refers to Sita, or
Right. Right.
maybe Lakshmi Narayan means Hare here refers to Lakshmi. So the
Right.
feminine,
Right.
the feminine aspect of the absolute truth is referred to as the energy of the Lord, and which is
Right.
mainly addressed as Hare. But
Right.
Hari is referring mainly to the Lord,
Okay.
who takes us all our inauspiciousness.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. So any specifically the Om Tat Sat part, was that clear? I'm just
Yes. Yes.
okay. So any other feedback from other devotees? Was it palatable? It was quite philosophical.
Yeah, Prabhuji, it was philosophical, but maybe we need to read it to understand more. But at least whatever you explained, yes, was good actually.
Yeah. So what you need to basically understand is that transcendence means going beyond the material world. But when we go beyond the material world, the transcendence also has a lot of range. And it starts from liberation, but ultimately it ends at simple liberation like Brahma Jyoti liberation. Then it goes to Vaikuntha planet liberation. Then it goes to even higher liberation, which is attaining the lotus feet of the Lord in the Golok Dham. So Om Tat Sat is actually referring to the transcendental absolute truth from Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagwan, all aspects. So some people refer to the some people may not have the very accurate and a detailed or advanced conception of the absolute truth. So what we are explaining to you here in these classes is that Lord Krishna is the final word of the absolute truth. That is the ultimate absolute truth. That is the full understanding of the absolute truth. But not many people may have that understanding of the absolute truth. So what the Lord is saying is that even if you have this understanding that you are doing this activity for some absolute, for the transcendental purpose, it is not for keeping myself in this material world. I am doing it mainly to please the absolute truth. Then any of that activity, even if it is done at a Brahman level, at an impersonal level, that opens up the door for you to move uh, beyond this material existence. Otherwise, it is of no use. That is what the last verse says. It is of no use. You do any charity, you do any whatever yajna, dan, tapa, uh, and without any faith in the absolute truth, it will continue to keep you bound in the material world. That is what the gist of the 17th chapter is. So ultimately, it is hinting towards devotion. It is hinting towards surrender to the absolute truth.
Prabhuji, one question on the sattvic mode.
Yes.
So we often, see in Mahabharata, Krishna does things with good intent.
Hmm.
For instance, to preserve dharma,
Hmm.
he resorts to, indirect means or non. So seemingly not the right means. So,
Hmm.
for instance, in the case of killing of Karna, for instance,
Hmm.
right? So how is this? How should we read that kind of?
See, the Lord in the normal circumstances, or in circumstances where uh, all these scriptural injunctions can be followed, then Lord does all that. It is not that the Lord doesn't want to follow that, because Lord Himself said in the 3rd chapter that do this just to set an example. I am also doing all my activities just to set an example. So the Lord doesn't break the rules in normal circumstances, but in circumstances where there is no other option, then the Lord is beyond the rules also. Lord is beyond the rules also. Rules are something to, why are the rules made? Rules are made mainly to bring law and order in the society, just for an example's sake, for some law and order, some discipline, that some rule is made. But if the rule, following the rule actually doesn't bring that law and order, then the Lord has the full independence. He's Swarat, he's independent. He can change those rules. He understands what is best in that situation. So that is something what how we can explain all those activities. Now, just to give you another example for that is parliament in the country. uh, Although the people who are following or going in the parliament are bound to follow the rules of the laws of the nation, but these are the same people who also bring new laws, new rules, because the old law or rule was probably not doing the job, not bringing the benefit to the society. So the parliament is above the law also. Although the people in the parliament, sitting in the parliament, follow the law, but they are above the law also. Similarly, the Lord follows the rule as much as possible, but if he understand or if he realizes that certain rule or certain situation is making actually things worse, then he's Swarat, he's independent, he can change things.
So, for instance, speaking a lie, if it's going to lead to a good outcome, is that okay?
No, I gave you a broad answer to that. The answer remains the same. These are speaking the truth or honesty. These are good practices of following dharma, but they are not the parodharma in itself. Parodharma means what pleases the Lord. That is actually parodharma. That is actually the ultimate definition of dharma. What pleases the Lord is actually parodharma. Sometimes you may speak the truth, but it may not be pleasing to the Lord.
Yeah, that's clear, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. So let me know any other doubts, concerns, questions.
Okay, I mean, the recommendation is to chant Om Tat Sat. Should we chant this over the other mantras? I mean,
No,
what's the
no. As I said, the understanding of absolute truth as Lord Krishna is the far end of this spectrum. Om Tat Sat. So when you are chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, that automatically addresses this Om Tat Sat. So so if you are writing, if whatever activity you are doing, if you are doing it with the understanding that you are doing it for the supreme absolute truth, for his pleasure, and that supreme absolute truth is Lord Shri Krishna, and you chant Lord Krishna's name, that is sufficient enough.
all right?
As I mentioned, Om Tat Sat is actually meant for a wide spectrum of transcendentalists. For devotees, if you are chanting Hare Krishna, that is actually as good as chanting Om Tat Sat. Actually, you are chanting Om Tat Sat in its best form.
All right.
Yeah. Okay, then I think we are done with the queries. So I would like to thank everyone for their kindness, attention, presence, and their blessings. All glories to Srimad Bhagavad Gita, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Let us now meet in the next class with the quiz on chapter number 16 and chapter number 17. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Radhi, Hare Krishna. Thank you, Guruji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.